Thank you to Sarah for letting us come to our event here today. We're running slightly behind time, but we'll catch up. I'm sure we can have a slightly shorter lunch so we're scoring for slippage of time. So I'll want to say anything else. Thank you to Sarah.
That's really fun. I'm going to talk about a project on a slightly different scale from what we've just heard about for a quiz, but I'm really looking forward to hearing how your function develops. It's going to be so interesting, isn't it, to see how just that kind of cultural change across the organisation works out. So I'm not just here this morning to keep an eye on my very expensive museum exhibition cases. I'm going to talk to you for about 20 minutes about the project which created this facility that we're sitting in. So that's what I'm going to cover. So Heritage Key is the home of the university's archive service. We opened in 2014, so we've just celebrated our 4th birthday with a lovely cake. But we did have an archive service kind of in existence since 1991. So the service is about 25 years old, but we've been accumulating stuff, like probably all of your institutions, for the whole lifetime of the university's existence and its predecessor bodies, so since 1841. So we've got an awful lot of stuff, and I'm using stuff in the very broadest sense, because you can see we've got an awful lot of different formats there in our collections. Our project was a collections-focused project, because initial audiences for archives and special collections are very much shaped by the collections and by that legacy of collecting, albeit haphazard collecting, or kind of collecting by default. So audience needs and collections care were very much at the heart of the service and the project that created Heritage Key. So I'm just going to give you a really quick overview, if you can bear with me for now. I don't know how many people here care or know anything about archives and special collections, but just bear with me for a minute, just indulge me. So the archives and special collections are unique, rare, irreplaceable material. There's quite a lot. We have very limited capacity to provide the full range of access. You can see some of the formats. Hands up, who's still got a Betamax player at home? No? Reel to reel? No? We've got all of that kind of stuff in the collections, and we used to not have any way of playing the material. So we have really limited capacity to provide access to the stuff and to meet the potential demand that was out there. So we were really a hidden service by about 2010-11. And we had quite a lot of audience insight through our work on customer service excellence, which we use extensively in computing library services as a service improvement tool. And by 2011-12, we had a very clear mandate to actively develop the collections in support of teaching, learning and research for members of the university, and the university created and funded a permanent post to kind of help us change that. And there was a really clear vision at senior levels to increase the numbers of external researchers and members of the public who were then the primary audiences for the collections. So at the moment, we're currently actively developing the collections along 6 kind of main themes. Obviously, the collections cover many topics, many subjects, massive cross-cutting themes like nationalism and gender and identity and all that kind of stuff. So we're developing in 6 key areas: art and music, and obviously implications there for sound and awkward stuff, particularly in the way of textiles. More awkward things with theatre and politics. That's one of the miners' strike banknotes that were issued in April. And then education and sport. So a really diverse group of subjects and potential audiences, and obviously a lot more topics and themes in collections. So having outlined where we were starting off, this is what we did to change things. So we ran quite a big project, quite big for archives and special collections. 4 big chunks of work, and you'll see the building work and design as the second one down in that list. The capital works creating Heritage Key were one of 4 big areas of work, about 2/3 of the total budget, but this wasn't just a capital project. And when I show you the project aims in a minute, you can see how the facilities, the physical facilities, underpin and enable quite a lot of the things. So these are the project's objectives mapped against the Heritage Lottery Fund's priorities, so those are the coloured ones. So HLF is bothered about people, individuals and learning. They're bothered about communities and people participating and volunteering and being together and all that kind of well-being stuff. And obviously being the Heritage Lottery Fund, they're interested in conservation and in heritage. And then those are our project aims, and you can see the bit in the middle which underpins all the others about the facilities that create exciting, enticing and flexible, multifunctional physical and digital facilities for learning and engagement. Now obviously there is a different mapping of the project's strategic objectives to our organisational objectives. I'm saving time, I'm not going to talk to you about that now, but if anyone's interested in that, there's tons of information in the evaluation report which I'm going to refer to later on, and obviously you can catch me later on. But you can see that the project really represented a major investment for users in physical infrastructure, along with that digital and intellectual infrastructure of cataloguing, of digitisation and of digital delivery. And again, I'm not going to talk about those things, but I can do if anybody's interested kind of individually. So I've set the scene a little bit about the collections, giving you a very brief overview of the kind of scale and time and costs of the project. And one of the things to emphasise about this particular Archives and Special Collections project is that really, really extensive consultation that we did, not just inside the organisation, but outside. And all of that fed into these really big pieces of work that you can see in orange as part of the title. Those are major pieces of planning documentation and of the ways of shaping the project. In particular, obviously, the REGA 3 kind of report, which you'll know is a kind of formal part of a capital works, physical capital works project. But for us, working with collections, how we were going to manage them and improve their management, how we were going to use them to engage with audiences, how we were going to interpret them, the way that we were going to use multimedia in this space, all of that had to come out of consultation. So the very early part of our Wickham project funded external consultancy in 2013, a really significant investment in capacity, because at that time we had 1.5 FTE in the team. We were a very, very tiny team. That's different now, there are 5 FTE now. But obviously we're still a very, very small team. So bringing in that external expertise, that bit of critical friend, that challenge, that ideas from elsewhere, was really, really, really important for us. So we had a very intensive consultation period over about 6 months, a really iterative process, taking one thing to one place and then tweaking it and then taking it somewhere else and then going back and kind of going around. As a service, there were no kind of policies or strategies in place when we set out on the project, so consultation was absolutely critical for that. For example, our acquisition policy. Did it fit with the research agendas in schools? What capacity did that mean for developing the collections in particular areas? Who were we going to serve? What were the school's strategic plans about their areas of research? How much space were we going to need for the strong room? What were we going to need in the way of specialist equipment for playing weird and wonderful formats, and where were we going to outsource that kind of thing? As I mentioned earlier, we've got a lot of sound, music is very important in terms of our collections, but also is one of the university's big research areas. But music has really, really difficult things to grapple with from a collections management perspective. So we needed to know and understand what all that was looking like. We needed to know who wanted to do what with the collections, what were we going to need in terms of space, what did the audiences look like, what did they want? Because we knew that there was a lot of potential, we knew that we couldn't fulfil all the need that was out there, but we didn't really know a lot about what people might want to do. And in some cases they didn't know until we could start saying, well, if we had this, then we could do that. And what would you do if we had a high quality exhibition facility? Would your students then do modules that were about public humanities and exhibition? And oh yeah, maybe they would. So sometimes it was bringing ideas to kind of shape the consultation, and sometimes it was sitting back and listening. So with all of that going on, the physical design of the space actually came last. Now our architect was lovely, he was great, but it was a little bit frustrating because he had to sit on his hands for quite a long time while we did a lot of this groundwork and talked with a lot of people and got stuff out of the collections and played with things. He had to sit on his hands and wait and then do a lot of work at the last minute, but it was well worth it, and he appreciated that having that new facility and really a new audience, everything had to be fit for purpose, especially the space. So all of that consultation fed into this design approach, and this we used across the physical design of the facilities that you're sitting in, but also with the use of the multimedia, both in the space around the corner. You'll see the touch tables, and you'll see the big curvy screen in a moment. But we also use these principles for our digital delivery, so the work that we're doing now. And we also used it for some of our engagement activities. So we know that these were robust principles that drew on that consultation, and as we went on during the project and doing that formative evaluation and then doing this big summative evaluation at the end, which has then taken us on into new areas of activity, these principles are still working for us. So I make no apologies for there being a lot of words there, because I think that's worth kind of sharing. So just a kind of quick overview of where we've come from. This is especially full of rain. So these are our old spaces for visitors in the main library, through on this same floor, but kind of through the way. And our hideous storerooms. We ended up in 9 locations on 3 different floors. They were absolutely appalling. They were very cramped. They were serious health and safety danger for staff. What was in there, stuff had been piled in. Chris was talking earlier on about the brave new shiny world of no paper, and we all know how different that is, don't we, when people have been in buildings and spaces and things accumulate. So we were in quite a dire state, which obviously impacts on everything that you're doing in archives and special collections. I've done some calculations since we've moved and co-located everything into one place in efficient storage, and I think that we've saved about 0.25, 0.5 FTE just on retrievals, which in a team the size of ours is actually a massive amount of resource. So in terms of a kind of significant investment in future capacity, that physical change for the stuff has made an enormous difference. We obviously had other issues that were impacting on the collections, so temperature, humidity. We had a huge mould outbreak because we had a leak. It was pretty dire, but it was very timely for HLF, as we could say actually. There's all this stuff, people want to get to it, and it is physically under threat. So the whole idea of the project was about making a big step change in managing the historic collections, in conservation, in cataloguing, but also in public engagement and kind of bringing and growing an audience that we could then build on once the project had finished. I've already mentioned that the university, kind of separately from the project, created a new post to support teaching and learning within the institution, so that the whole package came in one go. So all these hideous spaces are now lovely, shiny group study spaces back in the library. And those of you on the tour at lunchtime, please ask to see what that space looks like now. If you're going on floor 3, do you know? Who's doing the tour?
Yes, I'll take it on floor 3.
Cool. So take that with you and then look at the lovely shiny group study space, which looks in much better use of space. And then this space was the main kind of catering facility for the university, and I don't know if Lorraine and Laura might recognise the people sitting there in the picture. We're kind of standing roughly where they're sitting now, and that servery and the kind of kitchen area was kind of over there where the strong rooms now are, where the repositories are. The bacon butties were better in those days, but apart from that, I'm quite happy with how things have turned out for us. This space was freed up by the university moving its whole catering offer over to Student Central, which probably most of you would have seen as you were heading this way. So as we saw above, this was quite a complicated, albeit small scale, it was quite a complicated service transformation project. And the physical and digital design really underpins and enables a lot of the other developments, but it wasn't the only kind of thing with the project. So just focusing now on the physical space, kind of public front of house space is kind of this much of the pie. This is private behind the scenes, secure space that you'll see on the tour if you're coming at the end of the event. And then quite a significant chunk for kind of staff and stuff. One of the things that we really lacked in our previous accommodation was anywhere to do anything with anything other than on a trolley. And obviously a trolley is fine if you're cataloguing books, but if you're cataloguing difficult things, big things, there's a real limit to what you can do on a trolley. And if you're dealing with a collection of 1,400 boxes, which is the university's library, you can't really do anything with it if you're only looking at a tiny fraction of it is tiny. So for us, the most important part of the project for the staff, the bit that kind of makes the biggest difference, is actually that really boring processing space. Our research room is kind of just round the corner past that glass screen by where you came in. We've got a lot more space than we had before. We don't have to negotiate with fine art and visual art students who are perhaps using their spray mount and scissors and glue and other sorts of things that we don't really generally want with archives, which is what we were working with before. And then obviously our front of house space, we are very, very lucky in having this really big amount of space. With this space that we're sitting in, but also the exhibition space that you came through. We have these very high-spec museum cases, which we can now take loans in from the nationals. It's quite a big deal to have that. So in terms of collections visibility and what we're able to do, that's really, really important for us. And this part of the space is open very long hours, nearly 74 hours a week, self-guided. So that's really, really unusual for archives and special collections. So this is this space when it's not being used for an event. You can see there an image on the big curvy screen. It uses gesture technology to blow up things from the collections and tell you a little bit about them. So that kind of screens parts on this wall. I'll turn that on at the end of the day because obviously we're using this wall for projecting. But because we have this lovely flexible space, we're able to do all kinds of other things in it. We could host our own events and those of the people, so that's a pop-up art school on the left with lots of primary school children doing things. On the right was an event that we ran on interactive art, so it's art that plays music and you do some things with wiring, so that the colours and the way that the piece of artwork, which is like this, will actually play sound as you walk towards it. So that was quite a good piece of engagement activity. We obviously use this space extensively for university use, so for conferences, for poster sessions, for fashion show, for martial arts demonstration. We've got under fives dance going on here as part of the Contemporary Music Festival. On the bottom is a play that we did in conjunction with our local theatre. So this space works for a lot of people in a lot of different ways. It works the hardest because luckily it's not on the timetabling system, so it gives us quite a lot of scope for being very helpful to people at the last minute, which obviously then stands us in good stead. But the thing that I like the best is that we expose a lot of people to archives kind of by stealth, because everybody that comes into the space comes past the exhibition, might see something, might respond to something that they wouldn't otherwise see. And for me, that's one of the key things that we were setting out to do in the project. It tends to be the chemists in their conferences that like the exhibition the best. Chemists don't tend to talk to each other at lunch, so they love having their conferences here because there's something for them to do. So I've just finished the big evaluation of the whole project. And this is the logic model that HLF uses. I don't expect you to read all the words, but I just wanted to kind of give you a sense of the way in which the project has been evaluated. This is just the bit for the capital works. So this is the logic model. You can see that HLF want you to look at inputs, at outputs, and then outcomes, and then at the bottom those kind of underpinning assumptions and the external factors. So the idea is that you create this logic model at the beginning of the project, and then you're revisiting it over the course of the project, and then you're looking at it kind of comprehensively at the end. So this is just the part for the capital works. I've put the link for the whole of the evaluation report up there, because those of you that had heard of Heritage Key before you came here today might have heard something about the engagement work that we've done and some of the really innovative things that we've done with collections and with audiences, and all that is covered in that evaluation report with numbers and pictures and cost and loads of really, really detailed information. So anybody who's doing things with their archives and special collections, all that information is there for you to do whatever you need to with. We had over 200 qualitative and quantitative evaluation measures, but one of HLF's key indicators is visitor numbers. How many lottery players did it take to do the project, and then how many are benefiting? What was their return on investment? They say they don't do the sum, but there is one member committee that always does the sum. So we were projecting visitor numbers of 10,000 over 3 years by being open, of the project being funded, 10,000. And when we opened in 2014, that felt like a massive stretch. During those 3 years, we managed 23,000. So we, smashed that one out of the park, which I guess if I'd thought for even a moment about all the implications about what we're trying to do, I probably would have guessed it, but I wanted to be really cautious. That's a big learning for me. So 10,000, actual 23,000, and this flexible space played a really massive part in enabling other things to happen and us to capitalise on those opportunities. So just to wrap up, the physical and digital design for this project, the Heritage Key, not just the physical space, but the other kind of digital stuff that we did. These are the key things that I think are applicable to other projects. Obviously, we learned a lot of things that were very specific to the project. It's all in the evaluation report if you're interested. There's nothing here that is earth-shattering. There's nothing here that is particularly novel, but for us, that audience consultation, as distinct from stakeholders, audiences specifically, people that didn't know they were stakeholders, perhaps you might describe them as, that initial consultation and then really proactive and ongoing consultation and use of co-creation and all kinds of other kind of participatory things that we did, that was really, really critical to our success, I think. Because this was an Archives and Special Collections project, the collections had to be kind of the thing that was driving both the audiences and the design of the space. Obviously, repository space is kind of fixed space, it's expensive space, so you really need to understand why you're doing, what your interpretation strategy is. A lot of people come to visit and see our Wizzy multimedia and say, oh, I want some of that for my facility. And so, well, you can do, but you need to understand what it's doing in your space. This is what it's doing in my space. I see too many multi-touch tables that aren't really earning their keep because they're just the Wizzy thing that somebody wanted because they've seen them somewhere else, usually here. For us, that kind of sustainability thing and the flexibility thing, those are words that often get used, but understanding what a common definition of that is was quite important for us. So specifically for us, sustainability was HLF contractually require us to be open for 10 years after we complete, otherwise we have to give them their money back. So, but in the universities, that was a very kind of fixed window. We are obliged, we have this legal obligation for that to be sustainable. Flexibility can mean many things to many people because it's a flexible kind of word. So understanding what a flexible group space, what that meant to people and really teasing out what that was so that we could deliver it or deliver most of it or deliver enough of it was quite important. Obviously, we all know that you never get things right up front. So in terms of tweaks for us, there was a bit of extra furniture and we put these acoustic curtains in because we found the acoustic in here was a bit too live. It was great for music, it was great for performance, but for some spoken word events like this, where there were speakers who weren't particularly great at projecting, and the acoustic wasn't really working, so we put those curtains in to just make that better. And the thing that really surprised me, but if I'd taken 5 minutes to think about it, I probably shouldn't have done, was having that attractive and flexible and available space that wasn't on the timetabling system has been absolutely massive. The VC is very often down here because he likes the big curvy screen. He loves to bring VIPs because we're in the same building. It's very easy for him to do that. But we routinely get rung up by people to say, oh, my teaching room's been cancelled this morning and can you take a class of people who need to do painting? Yes, we can. We've got the floor, we can do that. So that was really, really useful for us. But it's also been helpful for other parts of our service. We deal with information and records management as well. And so being able to kind of be responsive to the university's needs in other ways, in kind of physical ways, also then helps us do some of that advocacy for information and records management, which sounds crazy, but it really makes a big difference. So, there we go, I've caught up with our time. I'm speaking very fast and I'm leaving lots of things out. I'm going back to work because today I've been Leo Appleton and I wasn't intending to be here, so I've got a whole day of work. But I will be doing the tour of Heritage Key at 4, and perhaps if anybody's got any burning questions, we better do it now because I'm not going to be around later on. Otherwise, there's the link for that project evaluation. Okay. Thank you.